Okay, today we'll be talking about the amendments, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 22nd, and the 16th Amendment. So, the 16th Amendment was that the Congress could tax the people and not ask the states about it. And then during the Civil War, the Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1861, which included a tax on personal income of to help pay for the war. But this tax was repealed in 10 years later. However, the Congress wanted to bring it back, but then the Supreme Court called it unconstitutional because it was direct taxation appointed according to the population of each state. So the 16th Amendment was ratified in 1913, removing the objection by allowing the federal government to tax the income of individuals without regarding the population of each state. So then, even though the Constitution would not allow Congress to levy income tax, a bill was passed during the Civil War changing the sentence of 3% tax on income over 800 reversed the to the law eventually resulted in taxation including over 600, but each tax ended up uh, as but such tax ended in 1866, and in 1894 Congress imported a 2% tax on income over 4,000, which led the Supreme Court case and a 5-4 decision strike down on this law. And the result of this was that Congress could tax the people and they gave more power to the government. In the 17th Amendment, the senators mostly what I was talking about is just voting for the people could vote for their senators, and that senators had 6 years, and that they had to find each state had to have two senators. If one wasn't filled, that they had to look for someone else to fill in that they will have to choose to pick for the next person. And then so they ratified it in April 8th, 1913, and was modified in the Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution by allowing voters to cast direct votes of the U.S. senators. Um, oops. A year later, the House accepted the change, and on April 8th, 1913, the resolution became the 17th Amendment, which adopted the senators to close vote before the proposed constitutional amendment itself passed the Senate. In any case, the special interests and political machines gained control over the state legislature. Over half of the states adopted the Orlando system, but in 1912, the Senate investigated the bribery and corruption in the elections of Louisiana Senate. William Lorman's indirect did the only a constitutional amendment mandates the direct election of senators by a state citizen would ally public demands for reform. So, in the House passed the proposal amendments for the direct election of the senators in 1910 and 1911 that included the race right uh, meant by bar federal intervention in case of racial discriminations amongst voters. Prior to it, senators were chosen by state legislators. In the 18th Amendment, after 1 year from ratification of the Articles of manufacture, sales, and transportation, and intoxication of intoxicating liquor within and the import of therefore into the exportation of it through from the United States and all territories subject of the jurisdictions through the beverages proposed in the hereby prohibited. So alcohol was prohibited, and the states all had to enforce it, and was prior to it within 7 years the date of the submission hereby of the state of the Congress. So the 18th Amendment was only amendment that ever had been repealed from the United States Constitution via the inclusion of the 21st Amendment. The 18th Amendment called a ban on manufacturing, selling, and transportation of alcohol beverages, known as a national prohibition of the 18th Amendment banning intoxicating liquor, with the exception of those used for religious rituals. It also the First Amendment to impose a date by which it was ratified. If the deadline was not met, then an amendment would be discarded. The ratification of the 18th Amendment was complete on January 16th, 1919, and would be taken effect on January 17th, 1920. An important note of the 18th Amendment was it did not prohibit the consumption of alcohol, but rather simply the selling, manufacturing, and transportation of alcohol beverages. A result of the temperance movement that concepts the prohibition had already been implemented by many states prior to the ratification of the 18th Amendment. Therefore, the 18th Amendment was quickly ratified into law. The temperance movement would prove to become a powerful collection of individuals and factions that would grant there a certain political power which many politicians were afraid to confront. Church groups and business elites, feminists, and subjections included. But 41st states approved the 18th Amendment. It was just over a year time for its introduction. 19th Amendment. It was the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The Congress shall have power to enforce the article by appointed legislation. It's the right for the women to vote. It was ratified in 1920. The 19th Amendment was the U.S. constitutional granting American women to the right to vote, a right known as the women's suffrage. U.S. At the time the U.S. was founded, the female citizens would not share all the rights as men, including the right to vote. It was not until the 1848 that the movement for the women's right launched on the national level of Convention of Seneca Falls in New York, organized by the abolitionists Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. Followed the convention that demanded the vote became a centerpiece for the women's rights movement. Stanton and Mott allowed that Susan B. Anthony, with other activists, formed an organization to raise public awareness and lobby in the government to granted voting rights to women. And after the 70-year battle, these groups were finally emerged victorious in the passing of the 19th Amendment.